Hi guys, so today we would be talking about eugenics in hindsight. So what is eugenics, right? So eugenics is the practice or advocacy of improving the human species by selectively mating people with specific desirable hereditary traits. Now, it literally means good creation. The ancient Greek philosopher Plato may actually have been the first person to promote the idea. It aims to reduce human suffering by breeding out disease, disabilities, and so-called undesirable characteristics from the human population. Now, early supporters of eugenics actually believed that people inherited mental illness, criminal tendencies, and even poverty, and that these conditions could be bred out of the gene pool. Now, it was actually Sir Francis Galton, who was the half cousin of Charles Darwin, right? Whose theory of evolution via natural selection is so famous. Now, since the backbone of the theory was about the unfit organisms in a population dying out, he sought to apply it to humans as well, later to be dubbed as social Darwinism. Now, what he wanted to basically convey was that if, as Charles Darwin had argued, that species had been altered by systematic selective breeding, like cattle and racing pigeons, then so could human beings be bred to improve the race. He coined the term eugenics in 1885. Now, how did the idea come about, right? The idea basically got mixed with a feeling of nationalism as the race for dominance in Europe grew. Slowly, the idea that it was not the individual that must be eugenic, it was the nation started to grow. Only by selectively breeding among its citizens would nations stay ahead of their continental rivals. The state must have a say in who should breed and who should not. But the focus soon shifted from encouraging the eugenic breeding of the best to halting the dysgenic breeding of the worst. And the worst soon came to mean mainly the feeble-minded, which included alcoholics, epileptics, and criminals as well as the mentally retarded. Right? So much of the enthusiasm for eugenics stemmed from anti-immigrant feeling at a time of rapid immigration from Eastern and Southern Europe, and the Eastern Immigration Act of 1924 in USA was a direct result of eugenic campaign. Now in Germany, more than half of all academic biologists joined the Nazi Party, which was a higher proportion than in any other professional group, and not one criticized eugenics. Stanford president David Starr Jordan originated the notion of race and blood in his 1902 racial epistle, Blood of a Nation, in which the university scholar declared that human qualities and conditions such as talent and poverty were passed through the blood. And many famous socialists and authors of the 20th century spoke in creepy manners about eugenics, right? A character in George Bernard Shaw's Man and Superman said, being cowards, we defeat natural selection under cover of philanthropy. Being sluggards, we neglect artificial selection under cover of delicacy and morality. And when we talk of industrial support, right, the Harriman Railroad fortune paid local charities such as the New York Bureau of Industries and Immigration to seek out immigrants in New York and other crowded cities and subject them to deportation, confinement, or forced sterilization. The Rockefeller Foundation helped found the German eugenics program and even funded the program that Joseph Mengele worked in before he went to Auschwitz. And the aim was literally to wipe away the reproductive capability of those deemed weak and inferior, the so-called unfit, and often suggested methods included gas chambers, euthanasia, forced sterilizations, among others. But many mental institutions and doctors practiced improvised medical lethality and passive euthanasia on their own. One institution in Lincoln, Illinois, fed its incoming patients milk from tubercular cows, believing in a eugenically strong individual would be immune. 30 to 40% annual death rates resulted at Lincoln. Some doctors practiced passive eugenicide one newborn infant at a time. Other doctors at mental institutions engaged in lethal neglect. Now, only after eugenics became entrenched in the United States was the campaign transplanted into Germany, in no small measure through the efforts of California eugenicists who published booklets idealizing sterilization and circulated them to German officials and scientists. Hitler actually studied American eugenics laws. He tried to legitimize his anti-Semitism by medicalizing it and wrapping it in the more palatable pseudo-scientific facade of eugenics. Hitler was able to recruit more followers among reasonable Germans by claiming that science was on his side. Hitler's race hatred sprung from his own mind, but the intellectual outlines of the eugenics Hitler adopted in 1924 were made in America, right? And how is the eugenic program applied? A eugenic program is basically a public policy structure designed to have its effect on gene frequencies in whole populations. It is of two types. Negative eugenics basically has to minimize the transmission of genes that are considered undesirable. Positive eugenics has to maximize the transmission of genes that are considered desirable. By negative eugenics, you can apply it by provision of information and services, that is reduction of unplanned pregnancies and births, right? So you can advocate for sexual abstinence, promote the use of contraception, emergency contraception, voluntary sterilization, and abortion. By negative eugenics, by incentives, coercion, and compulsion, you can give incentives for sterilization, payments for sterilization in developing countries, curtailment of benefits to welfare mothers, compulsory sterilization of the mentally retarded, compulsory sterilization of male and female criminals. By positive eugenics, you can do it through financial incentives to have children, selective incentives for childbearing, taxation of the childless, ethical obligations of the elite, and eugenic immigration. The new eugenics which we see currently can be practiced by artificial insemination by donors, egg donation, embryo selection, genetic engineering, gene therapy, cloning, and you can even have parenthood licenses wherein the state determines who is fit and who is not fit to have children, right? In today's eugenics, we also find voluntary forms in terms of that abortion of imperfect fetuses is something that is accepted by the society, whereas abortion of fetuses based on sex is not accepted, even though it's practiced in certain parts of India right now. In involuntary forms, ban on marriages between relatives is accepted and compulsory sterilization is not accepted. What are the challenges, drawbacks, right? So despite its popularity, the eugenics movement was doomed from the start because most of the traits studied by eugenicists had little genetic basis, right? Because the kind of categories that they put people in did not have like actual scientific basis and weren't clear cut from each other, right? And the possibility that environmental factors such as poor housing, poor nutrition, and inadequate education might influence the development of these traits was dismissed. The ability to control the genetics of a population can give a lot of benefits, right? The biggest of which is removal of inheritable diseases from a population, the more of which we will see in the case study that we've taken up. Uh, and the disadvantages are often that like it can allow for ideas like racism and prejudices to manifest themselves, which was seen when we talk of the violation of people's individual rights through forced sterilization, as was done in US and Sweden, or even mass killings in Germany, right? And in India this manifests in the form of female feticide. Now, the private eugenics basically means that the reproductive practices based on the predicted outcome of the child, be it the health or appearance of the child, right? Since parents need to take care of a child while it grows up, we need to allow parents to be informed and take decisions about having the child, else it can result in neglect. Unwanted children are often abandoned or face neglect, which results in trauma and stunted mental growth, resulting in an unfulfilling life, right? So if a child is born with something like Down syndrome, we need to ensure that the parents who are having the child are prepared to take care of the child, else that child can have an even worse life, right? So the case study we've taken up is Dor Yeshorim. Dor Yeshorim, also called Committee for Prevention of Jewish Genetic Diseases, is a non-profit organization that offers genetic screening to members of the Jewish community worldwide. Its objective is to minimize and eventually eliminate the incidence of genetic disorders common to Jewish people, such as the Tay-Sachs disease. In both the Ashkenazi and Sephardi Jewish communities, there is an increased rate of a number of genetic disorders, such as Tay-Sachs disease, which is an autosomal recessive disorder that goes unnoticed in carriers but is fatal within the first few years of life in almost all homozygotes. Now, it's needed because Orthodox Judaism generally opposes selective abortion. Although pre-implantation genetic diagnosis is often approved by halakha, it is often a difficult and costly process. By avoiding marriages between carriers, the incidence of disorders decreases without having to resort to such methods. Now, Dor Yeshorim advocates anonymous testing. Individuals are tested during large sessions in Jewish schools and processed anonymously with only a PIN linking the sample with the candidate. Knowing the risks before conception, couples can decide to adopt or to conceive using artificial insemination techniques or a donated egg, or they can take their chances, right? For single individuals, the test can guide marriage or mating decisions. Some traditional orthodox communities screen children and use the information when matching partners. Now, they don't directly tell individuals which diseases they are a carrier for in order to avoid unnecessary emotional burden. When two members of the system contemplate marriage, they contact the organization and enter both their PINs and dates of birth. When both carry a gene for the same disorder, the risk of affected offspring is 25%, and it is considered advisable to discontinue the plans. They screen for a wide variety of diseases like cystic fibrosis, Niemann-Pick disease, and Bloom syndrome, along with Tay-Sachs disease. Now, the critics have often termed it as a wedding tax, whereas some have often said that it is affirming eugenics, which is the idea that Jews are the repository of bad genes. But the positive impact is pretty clear because now 30 years old, carrier screening for Tay-Sachs is the longest running population-based program designed to prevent lethal genetic disease. Screening has reduced the number of Tay-Sachs cases in the US and Canada by 90%. Before 1970, physicians diagnosed at least 60 new cases of Tay-Sachs in the US Jewish population each year. Today, there are fewer than 5 new cases annually. Now, the conclusion that we've reached is that while most modern accounts of history of eugenics present it as an example of the dangers of letting science, genetics especially, out of control, it is much more an example of the danger of letting governments out of control. It is important to let individual parents make choices about the health of a child, and the state or organizations can play the role of an informant and facilitator like the Dor Yeshurim program. And at its birth, eugenics was not a politicized science. It was actually a science-sized political creed. These are some references that you can look up. And the Genome Autobiography of a Species in 23 Chapters by Matt Ridley has heavily informed this presentation. Thank you.